back to your Daily Dose. My name is Robert. By now, you better know, Brother Will. We've been doing this for a bit, and it can't be enough. I want to dive into something we talked a little bit about previously. We kind of skipped across the surface, but let's get into it. The song "Dad Was Here." I came to you with this. It's derivative of Boys of Summer. It's hopefully leaning into the fourth film we're going into, and it really encapsulates the journey of the film in a lot of ways. And the first pass through, what I gave you was a ballad, and you mentioned singing it and getting choked up to the point, and God, I could hear it. It was beautiful. Chris and I listened to it, and we are both like, "Wow, Will." And by the way, she has told me that you have either insecurities or not great feelings about your voice. I love your voice.
I
So
do. I still do.
that's,
I
for what it's worth, that's your journey. I just want you to know I love your voice.
appreciate that.
So you give me this great thing, and we come back, and I listen to it, and I was very careful about how am I going to roll this out and when I go. And I remember listening to it, and it was great. But I said, you know what? It's it's like almost too much of a downer, and I don't know any better way to put it than that. It was just the emotion was there, but it was just so. I think the word I'm looking for is maudlin. It just had that kind of feel to it, and I said, and so I took another direction. And man, I can't say enough about how quickly you ran with it. We went 180 and and cranked it up to 130 or 140 BPMs and gave it that energy and made it more of this kind of sing along anthem thing. Tell me about that process going from the slow to the build of what it became and how that journey was for you.
That was interesting for me because when you did first present it, as you mentioned, it had a ballad feel. The lyrics are super emotional, super personal, and so a natural inclination would be to make that into you know a serious, so to speak, song. And I was a when you first presented the idea of making it upbeat, I thought, well, I don't hear it at first, but I'm gonna go with this. And the second I started laying down the tracks, I went, I hear this now. Like I didn't even had it hadn't even sung it yet, and I started hearing it as I was laying down the tracks and producing uh, the beginnings of what that was going to be. And I said, "Oh yeah, this was the call," um, because it's you can still have that emotion there. The emotion's still there, except now I think it'll connect to. I think it'll just uplift. It's kind of a dichotomy where you're dealing with this thing, and then but you're still celebrating what's happened, like the life you've had.
Yeah.
Um, so it's I thought that was a great call on your part.
Well, thank you. And
Take
again,
that
back to
direction.
if we talk, hopefully maybe some students hear this to talk about again, I think repeating the theme of steel like artists, one of the things we do well in our communication is we put something in front of us and say, it's like this. Remember, and here's some of the influences I remember. Walk of Life was one thing that just unpeeled right away, the Dire Straits song. And then, I mentioned Natasha Bedingfield's Unwritten. I mentioned, God, there was another one in there that
The John
John Cougar, the hand clap, right? It wasn't hurt so good, but it's Jack and Diane. Um, to get, we were talking about if I can't explain to you the feel, I go, it sounds like, and you grab it and you go, oh, got it. And I think that's so important in art because people try to put language to it. Sometimes it goes, it doesn't need language, it needs representation.
I think your ability to describe timbre, and that's one of the things I communicated in the film panel I did, is that sometimes you just need to know the sound. Just tell me the sound. What are you looking for? We can, and we'll start there. But knowing you, I knew what you were doing. It's funny because I had that original pass through. I had an organ part in there, but it was just buried.
Mm.
And I thought, oh, what I need to do is give this a little bit more bounce and bring it up. and you're like, that's it. And so,
Well, that
uh,
fit with the whole ballpark vibe, the classic organ. I don't know which patch you use, but it sounds like, Wurlitzer or something like that.
it's funny. I took a B3 organ, and the plugin I have will allow you to change the stops on it, and I played with them until I could find the ballpark sound.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just like, no, this has got to be right. And so that's the great thing about art and creation is, you have this palette of sound in front of you, and you get to play with it and make it what you want it to be, or at least get it as close as you hear in your head as you could possibly make it with your resources.
Yeah, and there's things that are spoken and things that are unspoken. I don't know how clear I made this last part, but you hit it so well. In the last repeat of the verse, when I had you break it down to cut time, which by the way, my daughter gave me that term. I didn't know that was called cut time when you do that. I was like, because here she is, she plays her cello and she's got orchestra. So she's got some music theory that I don't. I'm like, cool. Because I played it for her and she's like, oh, you mean cut time? I'm like, oh, good. Thanks. I'll tell Will that. Shout out to Francesca. Um, but had you break it down and just the hand clap was there, and then you gave the voices and it gave this kind of it gives this kind of rich, warm, I'm going to call it 70s vibe, and also this thing that is so inherent into you because of your decades of experience. It has the sing-along feel. This is what I wanted for that song so much, and I so hope it finds an audience, that people hear it, play it, and they are themselves going, dad was here. They're together, they're with it. They realize, because like you said, everybody's got a dad. And by the way, the diversity of those relationships is infinite, right?
Right.
So, but the idea that dad was here, I think I gave you the initial vision of it. Like, this is how I get a lot of songs. I had a vision in my mind of somebody spray painting on the wall, dad was here, and seeing the dripping graffiti like look. And I was like, oh my God, there's something, dad was here. That's universal. That's big.
It's funny, you mentioned that. When I first saw the title, my picture was like it that was carved into a park bench.
Perfect.
And
Perfect.
and so it's funny that you bring that up, that you saw it as like a mark that someone has left.
That's it. That's right.
And so and that's the way I saw it. The again, uh, your direction on that was just incredible. I read it really well. And it's always fun trying to translate those someone else's what they're hearing, and the trial and error and back and forth. And it's great. One of the things I try to teach our students is in the film scoring classes. It's not your baby, it's their baby,
Oh, that's cool.
and they get to do they so your art, it's not your art, it's their art.
Yeah.
You're the translator. And uh,
Yeah. You use the
so
term
making those
translator.
calls with the harmonies and everything, I thought that was just fantastic on your end.
Well,
It just
and again, you nailed it. And you use the word translator. The one I use often, you maybe heard me say before, is midwife, right? That's Stephen King's thing. He talks about ideas being things that, architecturally, or not architecturally, but archaeologically wise, he's digging up bones, right? He's birthing things into the world. He didn't make them. He's just carefully, craftsman like, bringing them into a way. And sometimes they come up, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes they break apart on the way. It's like, but it all gets back to the work. That's what you and I think, are another reason we work together so well, is we're about the process. We're not just trying to get it done and here you go. We're really, you clearly care about what I think, and you listen, and when you don't get it, you let me know too. And and you've given me the space to, when something doesn't work right, to tell you, no, this isn't quite it. And again, you don't get hurt or offended by that. You go, cool, let's try the next thing. That means the world to me.
yeah, sometimes it's just uh you know we're not mind readers, but in our field of work, we have to try to get as close to that as we can. And it's great. Like, I've never minded the word no. I mean, that's an industry word everybody should get used to. Word no. But it's, to me, it's, I don't take it as something personal. I take it as collaboration.
Yeah,
And that's part of the process is, no, I don't hear it that way.
right.
Even, in songwriting, if you're in a room of co-writers, it's not uncommon for someone to say, I don't hear it that way. And can we try a different approach?
Yeah.
And
Eh,
sometimes there's argument to be made. And sometimes, you know, John Williams arguing, not maybe not an argument, so to speak, but surprising Steven Spielberg with, I've got this theme for this shark thing you want to do. What's that? It's two notes. He goes, no, you got to trust me on this. Um, there's a great documentary on Disney Channel about John Williams, and he talks about that. So, um,
That's awesome. Well,
but
you know what? That's a good thing for you and I to look at as we continue. By the way, all of this is so exciting to me that it's not posthumous. It's like launching forward. We have so much more to do, and to look at how other greats have collaborated. That's only going to develop more language for us. So thank
oh,
you for that. I'm going to watch.
absolutely, yeah, it's great. I can't remember the title. I think it's called Music by John Williams. That's what it's called.
That's boy, really, really catchy. Right to the
But
point.
yeah, the great thing about that documentary, it does talk. He talks about collaborating, and of
Yeah.
course he talks. I mean, it's biographical too, but he never impressed me. I look up to him so much just from his body of work, but after seeing him in a personal effect, I saw that, wow, he's really working with these people. It's really a collaborative process, which the final product is just phenomenal. We all have to agree those movies are in the pantheon, not just the themes, not just the film itself, but the collaboration. They're in the pantheon of great films of all time.
I know we're way over time in this, but I'm just going to let it run because this is so good. I'm just going to roll into this just to say that, yeah, film is from an artistic standpoint. I mean, the broad cinema, not just the actual film strip. Obviously, we're in digital world now, but it is the most collaborative art form I know of that humans engage in. When you talk about the layers and levels in which people have to bring what they bring to make a film what it is. I mean, I know it intimately from my years in Hollywood and working on all kinds. I mean, everything from a background actor to a crew member on multiple levels to being a writer, director, actor, editor. I know all the levels and all the things. And it's just insane the number of different departments and perspectives that have to come together to shape this thing that's ultimately going to have a single version of itself, right? All of that somehow has to get jammed into that space, and the sound that comes through it. It's an insane amount of collaboration, and it is both vexing and infinitely inspiring to pursue it to me.
I think that's one of the things that fascinates me with film and cinema is, as a composer, I can sit in my room and I can write a song or compose a piece of music, go perform it or have it performed. But that all happened just with me. Or especially if I perform it myself. Whereas, as you mentioned, a film, you're dependent on hundreds of people in a made, like especially in a major motion picture, but even a short film and
Yeah.
a student film, you've got to you still have to depend on a cinematographer, the director, sound designer, music, actors, and even just you know I've heard people go, oh, it's just a student film. Just a student film? Do you know what you put into that? You, like that's an accomplishment just to get,
Yeah.
if it's, well, it's 15 minutes. That's 15 minutes that you got to showcase your work and your ability to your social skills to work with others and pull it all together. And to me, that's one of the things that fascinates me about.
Yeah, it's a different and somewhat tangential conversation that I'll just dip my toe into at least here to say that, and because I know you get this in the musical side of too. The world has changed so much from when I started, working on 35 millimeter, and it was an extremely exclusive club at that point because of the cost. It was an incredibly expensive thing to make a film on film based on the material and the number of things you needed in order to make that work. I mean, my God, my first feature is shot on 35, and the film development cost alone was something like $70,000, and we shot at a low ratio, and that means shots that you shoot versus what actually ends up. We were like 2.5 to 1. We were very careful because everything was going on my damn credit card, which took me so long to pay off. And the lab ended up that developed it for us, this lab out in Pittsburgh, WRS, ended up booting the cost for us. They said, we'll take it. It's like, oh, well, okay, you're executive producers then, because they ate that. But the point being that the lowering of the bar to allow more people in, on the one hand, is good, but on the other hand, lends towards some of what you're saying of, oh, it's just this. Because what I heard when these things started becoming cinematic, and damn if they aren't, they are cinematic now. And maybe you see students work in that regard. It's incredible on the one hand. The problem, and this gets back to academia, is when people try to take shortcuts and they make the shots, and maybe they can make the shots, but they don't have the story and they don't have the collaborative art behind them. And they think, I can do this all on my own. And maybe you can pull off something as an independent. I'm not saying you can't, but there is the tension, the necessary tension that happens in collaboration. And I tell you, this is a conversation, boy, we'll take this another time, because this runs all the way up to AI and everything, right? That we talk about. It's a humanity question. It's a point that we're at right now. You get what I'm digging at?
Absolutely. I mean, not to dive too deep into the AI thing, but I can tell Chat GPT to write a song,
Yeah.
and it'll probably pump out an okay song, but
Yeah.
there's no heart in it. Chat GPT can't have an emotional connection. It can emulate what it thinks is emotion.
Yeah.
You were talking about and going back to the process, and it's funny how we can watch films and they can have wow, star-studded lineup, top of the line director, composer, this, and if they're not gelling, you watch it and you go, yeah, that was good, but something was missing.
Yeah.
You can tell when something is missing, and that goes for even Oscar nominated films I've seen. Like, well, yeah, it was really well done, but there was something missing. Something didn't happen right, and but it's hard to blame it on just any one. It could be one thing.
It's so silly that when people try to critically say, oh, the writing sucked or the acting sucked, and it's like, you do have no idea. I mean,
Yeah.
what I experienced as an actor blew me away, I remember, is when I saw something put up and I go, you use that take or that angle or this, that, and the other, you made me look like an idiot. And it's like that you are so in the hands as any performer and any composer even of the final, director, editor, producer, whomever it is that puts that together. They can make or break a performance in the editing bay. Absolutely. I don't mean just the performance, but the perception, the feeling, the everything. You can have great things that fall apart because they are, for whatever reason, inartfully done in that moment. And I was going to ask you this: did you happen to see this year's Oscar winner, Honora? Did you
I
see that
did.
film? So this guy, Sean Baker, the director, did you see one of his previous films, The Florida Project?
I did not see that.
Oh my God, Will, if you get a chance, go see that as soon as
I will
possible.
check it out.
It was robbed from the Academy Award in whatever it was, 2019 or whatever. But I remember seeing, you talk about humanity, and Honora, I started watching, I didn't know it was Sean Baker at first. I got 10, 15 minutes, I go, man, they really got the vibe. I mean, not that I know this world, but it just felt very real. I said, this doesn't feel like acting. I am immersed in this thing. And I was so engaged that I said, who did this? And I saw Sean Baker. I went, oh my God. And then I thought of the Florida Project and how big that was to me. And then I went in and just and watched the rest of it. And it is a very untraditional, non-traditional film in terms of storytelling, because it is more based on the experience and the world. It is so immersive and, you know, obviously very upsetting for a lot of reasons, which
Right.
it doesn't feel exploitative to me at all, though. It feels
Yeah.
just honest. Well, I mean, and again, if you feel differently about it, tell me. But I
No,
mean,
I agree with absolutely everything you said. It didn't you know, check the blockbuster
right.
boxes. You know, you don't really have any conflict till like 45 minutes into the movie. It's just this, but I've always been a fan of this slice of life thing, just getting to me that's character development for me, and just observing people. You're getting to observe this character and what she does, and you're developing a relationship. And then
Yeah.
something happens, finally happens, you know, not in the first 7 minutes of the movie, but after you've been watching her for an hour, now you really have an emotional connection, and you get upset with them, you get pissed off with them, you get everything, sad with them. And I'm like, wow. Um,
Hey, speaking of pissed off, sad, and everything else, I realize I have to go. My wife just yelled at me. I have a meeting. Shoot, this could go on for so
oh,
long.
oh, hey, thank you so much for inviting me. Um, we'll catch up again soon.
We'll do more soon. Ladies and gentlemen, the Daily Dose. Give it up for brother Will Townsley. I love you, man.
Love you too, brother.
Take care.
Bye bye.